And I'm joined now in the studio by the Premier, Ted Baillieu. Ted Baillieu, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Josie. It's always a pleasure to be here, and welcome to you too.
Thank you. Before we go to alpine grazing, can I just ask what information you've been told about the situation in Japan?
Well, can I say I, like many Australians, have visited Japan, and Japan is subject to earthquakes, as we all know. And indeed, there has been obviously earthquakes in New Zealand, and this is obviously a shocking incident at a very high register on the Richter scale. I've spoken already to the Acting Consul General in Victoria and offered our support and our sympathies. And obviously for any Victorians who are concerned about families, they should be trying to contact directly. I know that's difficult at the moment. I've made some calls myself which have gone unanswered, but there is a hotline, 1300 555 135, and I'd urge Victorians who are concerned about family or friends to try and make contact directly, and if that's not sufficient, then to ring that number, 1300 555 135. But our thoughts are with the Japanese community, and anyone who's visited there knows what a beautiful area it is and knows also how vulnerable it is to earthquakes and disasters like this.
Thank you for that. Let's move back now to alpine grazing and the detail of this study and your decision to allow cattle back into the national park. The scientist leading the study says it could take up to 6 months just to work out how to track the cattle in the national park. When asked then why cattle are already in the park, Dr. Mark Adams said, quote, "I think you have to go and ask the government about that one. That's not in my control." So, Mr. Baillieu, who made that decision and why?
The government made that decision, and this is an election commitment we made almost 12 months ago as we speak, and this is about fuel reduction. And these decisions came off the back of recent bushfires, obviously, 03 and 06, 07, and there is a strong body of opinion that grazing does help in fuel reduction. And many of those who've lived in the areas, worked in the areas, attest to that. There has never been a significant piece of research focused on that exercise.
Well, in fact, the CSIRO scientist that you just heard in James Bennett report said for the study he did on just that did not find that conclusion.
There's been a lot of studies about cattle grazing, but not focused on fuel reduction, and there's been very little about that. So we made a commitment to reintroduce cattle for strategic fuel reduction purposes. That was our commitment, and we're going to honour that commitment. And in addition to that, we've said, well, we'll undertake this on a research basis with just 400 cattle, and once upon a time there are 9,000 cattle. So I think there are unnecessary concerns about this in half a dozen areas. And this research will take place, and it will be peer-reviewed. And we're perfectly comfortable with where it's going, and it does comply, and all information that has been requested by the federal government has been provided.
All right, well, the Nationals MP Paul Weller says he wants cattle to be brought into the new Red Gum National Parks. Can you categorically rule that out?
Yes, we've already made that clear. This was a commitment about the high country, and with a view to reducing fuel loads in the high country. Now, I understand Paul's sentiment, and there is concern about the Barmer, but let's just focus on what the commitment was, and the commitment was to use cattle as a fuel reduction on a strategic basis in the high country. That's what we're doing.